Bartholomew was tending his garden in the bright morning sky. The flowers were in bloom, kissed by the golden light that flooded from the sun that crested over the hills like a crown. Beyond the cliffs was a desert of grass and dust that seemed to trail off to the end of the world. In many ways, this dry ocean of scrubland was the end of the world, a frontier from which anything was possible. He looked up from the plant he gathered soil around and realized that a man was approaching from the steep hillside. His clothes were burnt, trailing from his naked body. Bartholomew rushed to the man's side, yelling for his wife as he did so. "My God, man, what happened to you? Where did you?" he began. He stopped when he realized the man had no face. The faceless thing looked to Bartholomew. "What am I?" a perfect voice asked. Bartholomew fell to his knees. The sun shone through the translucent flesh of the being, and its head was framed by the halo of the rising sun. An angel. "My God, an angel," he whispered in awe. The rider's prisoner was hog-tied and draped across the back of his horse like a satchel. The prisoner writhed and moaned, but the rider cared not. He rode the desolation with the same stoic disdain he had always maintained. "You should kill me, lawman," the prisoner said, his voice a shuddering gasp behind gray teeth. He spat as he spoke. The rider said nothing as the prisoner continued to buck upon the back of his great black charger. The horse trotted at an unhurried pace, goaded onwards with the occasional kick of a spur in its ebony flank. "You should kill me right now. As soon as you close your eyes, I'm going for your peace. I'll put a bullet in you before I off myself, you son of a bitch, I swear," the prisoner growled, his voice edged with a pathetic desperation. For a moment, it seemed, the rider would once more keep his silence. Instead, he replied in a slow, measured voice, "You've barely even got one-eyed, Buxtan. You can't see for shit. I don't need to see to shoot you. I can smell the Rico whiskey on your breath. You try to escape and I'll shoot you." The rider trailed off. "Yeah," Mr. Buxtan replied, expectantly. "In the foot, then the other foot, then both your thumbs. Then I'll tie you back up and sling you back across this horse, one way or another. You're making it alive back to that town. You'll face a judge. I can't go back there. I can't see them again. Please, you hard-assed bastard, shoot me here. The bounty is dead or alive. I've seen the posters. Just say I resisted. Plug me between the eyes." He grunted, spitting from the saddle into the dry dirt of the trail. "What? I'd be plugging you between the eye? You've only got the one. Screw you, Abel Keen. You're the devil himself." Buxtan snarled with unremitting hatred. "I could shoot you in the head, but I am not losing this bounty, old man. That's not my style. You'll be meeting those that you wronged soon enough. Pray if you like, or keep cursing me. I don't much care either way." Keen almost cracked a smile. Buxtan simply groaned in utter misery. "You'll wish you'd shot me out here," Buxtan whimpered to himself. The evening air was as chill as a grave's mouth, as cold as the day was hot and stifling. The dried shrubs and powdery sand whispered beneath the hooves of Keen's horse. In the moonlight, the sand looked like frost. Keen pulled his furs closer, while Buxtan shuddered as the cold pierced his bones. The stars and the moon bathed everything in silver and white, but they could not disguise the warm glow of torchlight ahead, just beyond the next hill. This was too close to be the lights of the town. Could be bandits. "Give me a gun, lawman. I'll have your back." "Shut up." Keen growled at his captive as he quietly reached for the holster beneath his fur cloak. He eased the hammer back, his intense eyes glowering beneath the brim of his black hat. It wasn't bandits. Over the next rise, he saw a wagon, set on its side like a stranded turtle. The light came from oil lamps scattered across the ground like fallen stars. The tanned hide of the wagon's top was shredded. The wagon's guts were spilled in the dust. Great tins of beans and molasses, jugs of strong drink, and the various pickaxes and tools of a roaming homesteader, searching for a place to call their own. Keen's face remained set in a mask of scowling indifference as he took in the strange sight. He brought his horse to a halt with a tug upon the reins, hopping down with his pistol in his left hand. "There aren't any bodies," he grunted, partially to himself. His bewilderment didn't reach his features, but was clear in his gruff voice. Carefully, he walked through the fallen detritus of the destroyed wagon, picking through the ruins with the long barrel of his Smith & Wesson. The tangy scent of spent gunpowder clung to the air. Keen spotted dozens of shotgun shells nestling in the mess, and whole packs of shells left unfired in their cartons inside the wagon. But there was no shotgun. What in the hell did that mean? It took him a while, but eventually he searched the whole wagon. Nothing of use. But then he noticed, not far down the road, there was illumination. But this time a shape moved in the shadows cast by the flickering flames. Keen grabbed the reins of his horse and led it onwards, walking ahead of his beast. "Don't, please, Keen, I'm begging ya," Buxtan whimpered. Before his voice descended into violent sobbing, Keen rooted through his pack, sliding his Winchester discreetly from the folds of the cloth. His pistol was holstered, but his rifle would more than make up for it. He advanced slowly, his rifle raised to his shoulder warily. The sight before him gave him pause. For the second time that evening, a man stood, stripped of his breeches, at the center of a crudely drawn, five-pointed star, evidently etched into the gray soil. With the butt of the double-barreled shotgun the man held in one quivering hand, gin had been poured into the pattern and had been set alight, bathing the man in a flickering hell light. In the other hand, he clutched a mirror. The bald old lunatic was frantically peering around the shallow valley, using the mirror to look around instead of his naked eyes. The man's few remaining clothes were torn, as if savaged by a cougar. Desperately, he turned on the spot, jumping at shadows that formed as the light danced against the stone rise behind him. "What you see, lawman?" Buxtan called out. "Quiet," growled Keen, before returning his attention to the deranged man before him. His voice softened fractionally as he approached. "Calm yourself, old fella. What's transpired here?" Keen called out in a clear voice. The man spun around, pointing the shotgun towards him. "No tricks. It doesn't like the scourging fire. I copied the pattern from a book. They took the others to see it, but they wouldn't touch me. Took their dead. They don't like the light, whatever they say. Must be quiet though. The light took their eyes." The man was ranting like a loon, brandishing the shotgun like a scepter as he spoke. The fool might blast a hole in his chest by accident if he wasn't careful. Warily, Keen backed up from the armed man. He wasn't sure if the old man could hit him from this distance, but he took cover behind a rock either way. "Put down the gun, mister, and we can talk. Who took your friends? Sightless, but not demons. They're like you and me, but something else. Something worse." He spat. "But they ain't alone. It came out with them. Their faith feeds it, but it is constrained. It is only what they say." It whispered to me. "Hungers for the faithless. It craves a new revelation. Whatever they were, whatever it was, they ain't here anymore. Trust me, friend, they're gone. Now if you'd give me clear passage through this road, I blasphemy, a new idea to defile. The harvest of faith yields the realization of holy truth, to be sown again for their children." The man howled in his mania. Before the shotgun bucked in his hand, Keen ducked low as a chunk of stone exploded mere inches above him. "Don't make me put a hole in you. Drop the shotgun." Now Keen snapped off a warning shot. It pegged the mirror in the man's hand, shattering it into gleaming pieces. The man threw up his shotgun and fired, sending Keen diving back behind. His rock-wide shot. Keen knew the man needed to reload now. He pumped the lever of his repeater. His next shot would put the madman down. A shadow passed across him, as if a cloud or a vulture had swept overhead and blotted out the moon. However, briefly, he threw a glance skywards. Nothing, but he could hear a beat of wings, something powering itself across the heavens unbelievably fast. He looked back towards Buxtan. He was quiet. As he sagged over Keen's mount, everything was quiet. Not even the insects chirped. The old man, too, had been silenced. Keen suddenly leapt up from cover, his Winchester at his shoulder as he aimed towards the burning star. Blood. A pentagram scratched in the dirt, with a shotgun snapped into by its side. Inside the pentagram, a smoldering wingtip lay where the old man had been before. Instinctively, he swept his rifle up towards the heavens, but whatever had swooped down and took the man had vanished. How did negotiations go? "Do we have the road?" Buxtan asked, spitting at Keen's feet as the bounty hunter returned. "We have the road," Keen replied, his eyes downcast. "You shot him is why I bet, you son of a bitch. You can't take me to that town. I can't go back." Keen wasn't listening. He mounted his horse after carefully replacing his rifle. His mind was consumed by the strange sight he had just witnessed. What was out there, waiting in the wilderness? What the hell was going on? Keen shook his head, eyes focusing on the distant cluster of lights on the black horizon that twinkled like a constellation of stars fallen to earth. They were finally where they needed to be. The town of Solitude. Solitude was an old town, by the standards of the western frontier, prosperous when the gold was plentiful, and a dried-up hole of a place after it was picked clean by greedy madmen. Around the dwindling wooden shops, saloons and churches of the town lay a dozen great mines, Their workers still picked at the cliff face for whatever they could find of worth. Preachers came, and homesteaders. Since Keen had known the town, it had grown and recovered some of its former vitality. The foot soldiers of the good book had made the town a pious refuge. Its bars had closed and the undesirables were rooted out for the most part. The damned friendly bastards didn't even need a sheriff once the prayer groups had started up. Keen hated the place. It was so sterile, so ordered, everyone had been so serene. If it hadn't been for the bounty they had placed upon Buxtan's head, he would have left the place along with the drunks and murderers, who felt more like kin than the strange men and women in their crisp-pressed clothes and paper-thin smiles. If they paid well, though, that might change his less than stellar opinion of them. King smirked inwardly, though this mirth never reached his hard-bitten face. As they neared the town, Buxtan began to wail and weep openly, desperately biting at his dry lips. Keen punched him in the kidneys without turning around. "Shut up or I swear I'll gag you too," he hissed. "You don't understand. I had to kill her." It was the only way. Keen punched him again until he stopped wriggling. "They'll take your eye too," Buxtan finally wheezed before he fell silent. Keen ignored him. Keen hadn't had trouble the last time he came. He was always roping drifters and petty crooks for Solitude. And though they paid a pittance, they always paid. Catching a murderer, one of their own, would surely net him a far larger reward. Nothing Buxtan's depraved mind could conjure up would stop Keen getting him into town. Men with miners' lamps were waiting to greet them. A great half-circle of men wearing what looked like their Sunday best. Each of the men wore wide, friendly grins on their faces, as if they had smoked some soothing herb from the Orient. Yet, even more strangely, they all wore dark, round-eyed glasses that reflected the torchlight. "Oh, praise be, our champion returns, and he brings back our wayward brother, alive no less. 'Tis a glorious display of God's favor, praise be," the leader of this group proclaimed in a clarion-clear voice, raising his hands above his head as he pontificated. "Yeah, praise or whatever," Keen replied in his deep voice, half-heartedly making the sign of the cross. "I'm just here for the reward. I'll set him off at the courthouse for the judge. You can pay me after." The men paused, as if considering Keen's offer. "We can take him now," one replied, a little too quickly. Keen frowned. "I'm doing this by the book, understand? I'll take him to the court, make this official. We are doing it by the book also. By the only book man need abide by, the good book, the pastor or preacher." Keen had no clue, retorted with a calm smile. Keen shook his head. "I'll take him to the courthouse now, then you can do whatever the hell you want with him. Once everything is signed. Now make way, you hear," Keen replied, in a voice which brooked no argument. Slowly, the men parted before his horse as he trotted into town. The heads of the men turned to follow him. Throughout the altercation, Buxtan was utterly silent, as he tried desperately to make himself as small as possible. Keen's horse walked slowly through the town, bathed in the artificial glow of oil lampposts and candlelight in doorways. Everywhere he looked, people stared from their houses like ghosts, small black glasses making them appear ghoulish in the half-light. As he moved through the eerie town, he spotted Solitude's chapel, sitting upon a low hill. Apart from the rest of the settlement, it was a small wooden building, painted glaring white, with a small bell tower rising at the front of the building. Yet, despite its size, it felt larger. It felt like the cresting peak of an iceberg, with the majority of the thing hidden deep below. It glowered, cyclopean in the moonlight. King turned away, back towards his destination. But Buxtan suddenly began to shiver. "It was real, oh God! It was real," he whimpered, squeezing his remaining eyes shut. The courthouse jail was the only structure in the town made exclusively of brick, giving it a solid, dependable weight, almost reassuring amidst the strangely ethereal town. With a grunt, Keen hauled the thrashing form of Buxtan from the horse and dragged him up the steps into the jail. The man at the desk was another grinning simpleton like the others, and wore the same funny little glasses, perhaps a uniform of their freak show cult. Keen didn't know, or particularly care. "Praise to the God and the angel. You returned him to us, bless you, Dr. Irvin. They brought the wayward one home." The jailer called to another man, who sat on a chair in the lobby before the jailer's desk. The doctor wore a white suit, with leather gloves and those same black glasses perched upon a hook-like nose. He also smiled, but it was a wry smile, less disturbingly earnest than his fellow cultists. Slowly, he folded his newspaper and walked up to Abel Keen and his cowering prisoner, who sobbed and gasped in his restraints. Irvin sniffed, drawing the scent across his nostrils. He cocked his head to one side. "Are you a man of faith, Mr. Keen?" he asked with a sibilant voice. Keen turned to glare at the man, his hand resting lightly on his hip, close to his pistol. "I do not see how it any of your business so, no?" The man nodded, grinning smugly. Keen stared into the impenetrable black glasses. Seeing his own hateful scarred face glaring back at him in the reflection, Irvin turned to Buxtan, who avoided the doctor's scrutiny as best he could. "Welcome back, Godfrey," he said, nodding to Buxtan. The doctor turned and left. Snatching his wide-brimmed hat from the hat stand on the way out, Keen relaxed his hand. What in the hell was that about? The jailer smiled dreamily, sighing. "Buxtan killed his wife." Keen accompanied Buxtan to his cell, making sure he was sealed in by the jailer. "You can go now, Keen. Your job is done." Keen shook his head. "I'm staying here," he stated bluntly, setting a stool down opposite Buxtan's cell. The jailer's smile faltered slightly. "Why, you fulfilled your purpose and brought him here. God willing, justice shall be enacted upon him." Keen sat down, setting his rifle across his lap. "God has nothing to do with it, friend, nothing. I saw your boys out there, greeting us with torches and a mob. I won't have this man lynched. I'll wait till I see a proper official, a judge, or a fed or something. Otherwise, you can kindly fuck off with your talk of God's will. I follow the laws of man, not the laws of God. I shall sit right here till morning, thank you." The jailer's false smile returned. Of course. Sleep well then, bounty hunter. You shall receive your reward at daybreak. God be with you." Keen just shrugged as the man left the room. As he left, Keen rose from his seat to check all the drawers and cabinets nearby. "This is a dry town now, Mr. Keen. Any liquor they had they locked up in the saloon after they boarded the place up. You'll not find a drop in here," Buxtan called out from his cell. The prisoner sat upon the floor, his hands on his knees. Tears had dried on his cheeks, and now his face seemed set in a bitter countenance. Keen muttered something in reply, before he rummaged in his jacket pockets. Minutes later, he produced a hip flask of bourbon and took a swig, before tossing the almost empty flask to Buxtan, who quietly tried to coax the last few drops out of the container. With an outstretched tongue, "You killed Irvin's wife then?" Keen asked, sitting back down upon the stool. "I did. But it wasn't like what you think it was." "Oh, then how was it?" Keen asked in his usual gruff, faintly disinterested tone. "I thought you didn't want to hear my sob story. You beat me ragged when I tried it the first time we met," Buxtan replied. His tone had lost its pleading tone now. It seemed as if something had changed in his mind once he had reached solitude. It was either despair or acceptance. Keen couldn't tell. "I've got you to jail now. I didn't want to hear your stories when I had you hogtied. You'd have said anything to get me to let you go, or blow your head off. Now, you've got nowhere to go. I may as well listen now," Keen replied levelly. He'd hear the man's story, because Abel suspected those who had set the bounty on Buxtan's head were devious little bastards. Keen firmly believed in finding out all he could about those who sought to screw him out of his money. "S'pose that makes sense," Buxtan conceded warily. "I had to kill her. It was me or her. I was a ranch hand on the old Northland ranch. Cattle had been going missing and shit like that, so they sent me down here to ask around, find out if any bandits or rustlers had sold them cattle on the sly." "Aren't you a little old to be a ranch hand?" frowned Keen, as he lazily checked his rifle. "Not many avenues of advancement opened up to me, Mr. Keen. But that isn't the point. You have to listen to me." Buxtan was frantic again, his eyes darting around, as if the walls themselves might reach out and shred his skin. "I met the doctor and his wife. They were decent to me at first. They gave me food and a place to stay for the night. Then they asked if I was religious. Now of course I said yes. The whole town is full of this blessed of Bartholomew Bible-thumping bunch. That's when it started. They put something in the food to stop my feet working properly, and stoppered up my mouth with gauze. Calm every step of the way. The doctor didn't even flinch when he took out my eye. They took my eye, Abel. I thrashed and moaned like a horse in a snare, but they didn't care. They said to take your sight is the greatest demonstration of faith. Trust in the Lord's messenger to be your guide. That's why they wear the glasses. They gave their eyes to it, to the messenger. The jail's window grates had no glass in them, and the evening wind was unopposed as it whistled and whispered between the narrow metal bars, like the insidious chorus of a dead world. The transit of clouds obscured the silvered moonlight sporadically, in eerie tribute to the vulture's shadow Keen had encountered earlier that evening. Without thinking, his fingers tightened around his rifle's grip. They said the messenger was an angel, but its eyes were made only to witness the glory of God's high kingdom, not this low-born dungeon of flesh, so it needed eyes to see our world and judge its people. Many eyes, so many eyes. The doctor set off for the church with his prize, and his wife was set to take my other peeper. But I had faked being lame, playing up my helplessness to lure her in. When she came at me with a switchblade, I had the measure of her. I slit her fucking throat, Keen, and I'd do it again in a second. But even when I killed her, she couldn't stop smiling. Buxtan hissed furiously. Keen said nothing, but kept his eyes on the one door into the cell block, the flickering of an oil lamp the only light in the adjoining room. I ran. I didn't even have my pants, but I didn't care. I didn't dare go back to look for my things. Not when I could still see things. Things? Keen asked flatly, momentarily distracted by a cloud that swept past the window, followed by the loud stamping of the jailer down the hall. Wings and candles. It was like I was a part of something which wasn't human. The muscles didn't cling to the bones right, and the things I saw it do, peeling a man's head like a soft peach, wittering some kind of freak's tongue as it did it, drinking bones and taking faces. I never saw the whole beast, just the shadows it threw against the back wall. It was like I was there, looking out through my stolen eye. It was always surrounded with these eyeless heathens, falling over themselves to earn its praise and feed its sacrifices. But this thing doesn't think like a person, not even a little bit. Keen stood up, shaking his head, pacing before the cell. Buxtan, you're full of horseshit. I've been to this town plenty of times. They may love Godsmack as they fear him, but I've never seen nor heard a hair of what you're spewing. Buxtan threw himself at the bars, reaching out to Abel like a drowning man desperate for a hand. Keen, don't you go doubting now. I see you. You aren't sure anymore. I can tell. I didn't think anything of it either at first. They were just dreams. I thought I was just shook up by their torturing of me. But as you brought me closer, the visions came back. Waking visions. I can see it clearly now, squatting in its den. When they take the eyes, it must. I don't know. You look at their eyes, I swear to you. You'll see. Empty worm burrows. Keen struck the bars, sending Buxtan sliding across the cell. Keen almost reached the door before turning back. I said I'd listen. I listened. But I ain't fighting this fight for you. I do not make the law. I just a Keen. Buxtan interrupted with a yelp. The jailer burst through the door, a pistol in hand. Instinct took over. Keen threw his whole weight against the door, slamming the door on the jailer. A crunch. As the thick door cracked bone, the pistol boomed twice as the grinning loon struggled against him. Bullets struck metal and ricocheted, showering the cowering Buxtan with sparks. Keen turned to smash his rifle butt across the jailer's knuckles. The pistol clattered to the floor, but the cultist barged his way in, flinging Keen backwards. Before he could get a shot off with his rifle, the jailer grappled with him, desperately, trying to wrestle the gun from his grip. It was too close to punch. Knees and heads clashed as the two men rolled around on the floor. Eventually, Keen managed to wrangle himself into a position straddling the thrashing psychopath. Keen worked the lever on the Winchester to reload, but as the loaded bullet was ejected, he rammed the rifle downwards, impaling the jailer through the throat with the lever. The man made a strangled, gargling noise as blood gushed from his mouth and throat, coating Keen's leather gloves with sticky gore. But the man was not dead. He threw Keen off of him, as a man might cast aside a child. His strength unnerved Keen. Such raw power was unusual in even a healthy man, let alone one not long for this earth. The jailer rose to his feet unsteadily, desperately tugging at the rifle lodged in his trachea as he brandished a wicked-looking blade in his other hand. As he did, the weapon discharged again and again, firing randomly around the room. Soon smoke and shattered lamp glass was everywhere. Keen took up the jailer's fallen cold, rolling aside as his foe stabbed at him. Abel threw his stool at the man, smashing his rifle free, but the blow sent it flying into the next room. Keen faced down the madman. Both were standing at opposite sides of the room. The jailer still blocked his path, grinning through a stream of blood which should have killed him. His glasses had fallen away. Beyond their darkened glass there were no eyes. They were not even sockets. The holes that remained were puckered and crusted, cracked like the skin of a reptile. The corpulent man's fine clothes were now tainted with blood, and he still wielded a blade which was somewhere between a knife and a blasted scimitar. The man looked like a vision of hell as he advanced upon Keen. Keen had his Smith & Wesson in one hand, the Colt in the other. Each shot was a blow to the body that ripped veritable chunks from the massive psychopath. Eventually, He toppled to his knees. Abel jabbed the barrel of the Colt into one of the festering holes in the man's head and blew his brains out. The lifeless hulk slumped to the floor silently. There was quiet for a moment. Only the coughing of Buxtan and the slow panting of Keen broke the almost physical silence. Buxtan was the first to speak. "I told you, I will shoot you if you finish that sentence," Keen replied ominously. Rooting around on the jailer's corpse, Keen fished out a loop of keys and threw them into the cell. Buxtan silently took them and began trying each key to see which would free him. Why do you call it an angel?" Keen asked. "Because it looks like one," Buxtan replied breathlessly, not looking up from his work. Keen shook his head. "But I thought angels were blonde waifs with harps and such nonsense. Eyes on wings, blinding folk." "I don't get it," Keen asked, his voice honestly confused. Buxtan looked up. "You haven't read the Bible, have you, Mr. Keen? Not of your own volition, have you?" Keen just looked at him. "There is a good reason why them angels in the good book yell, 'Fear not when they come a-calling,'" Buxtan said darkly, as the cell swung open. "My advice, don't be there when they wake it up again." Keen grabbed Buxtan's arm as he made to leave. "What are you doing? We have to get out of here," the former prisoner pleaded. The bounty hunter ran a hand through his beard before replacing his hat upon his balding head. Not yet," Keen replied ominously. Buxtan's eye widened. Keen was putting on a solid, grim visage, but he could feel the tremor in his grip. The bounty hunter was terrified and confused. Before Buxtan could protest, Keen hauled him off. Irvin prowled back towards the jail. His hollow sockets took in no light, but he needed no petty vision to see. He had something greater now. The doors were locked shut, but they were no obstacle. Irvin pounded the doorframe to splinters. Before ripping away the panels, he cocked his revolver silently as he drew it from its leather holster at his side. "Pastor Bartholomew has been informed of your stubbornness. Friends old and new. He'll be coming," he called out in the gloom of the jail. Every lamp had been extinguished. But again, this meant nothing to the prowler. He searched the place slowly, almost on all fours like a hound as he sniffed and licked at the air. "Do not worry. Once your sight is gone, we can fill you up with something far better. Won't that be nice?" There was a flash in the darkness and Irvin's head snapped back. A single, neat bullet hole between his sockets dribbled with blood which began to fizz and froth with black foam. Irvin squealed, firing into the darkness frantically, even as his head began to collapse in upon itself, the alien blood consuming his frail human flesh like a necrotizing phage. Finally, he collapsed into a molten heap of formless, milling man parts, gurgling and wailing pathetically as it finally died. "Are you sure this is the work of a damn angel?" Keen cursed as he stepped over the mess and out into the town. Thankfully, Keen's horse yet lived, and the bounty hunter silently whispered in the beast's ear as Buxtan followed him out into the town. The houses were empty. The townspeople had abandoned their homes in a single great mass. Keen could see their tracks in the dirt track that served as a road through Solitude. "Where are they going? The church?" Keen asked. Buxtan closed his remaining eye. No. Somewhere under it. I can feel it moving. It is waking Keen. Its eyes are open." Keen breathed slowly. His hand was quivering as it gripped his gore-slicked Winchester. "Get on the horse, Buxtan." The one-eyed man was stubborn and followed Keen as he marched over to the saloon, which stood alone in the town, boarded up like a derelict's house. "They keep their alcohol here?" Keen asked as he began to rip away planks from the bars. "Doors. Now ain't the time for drinking yourself into a stupor, Abel. We have to leave. They're waking it, Keen. Feeding it notions and prayers and Lord knows what." Keen shrugged as he began to rummage through the dusty barrels that sat stacked on the bar room floor, rolling them out one by one. "This isn't for my consumption, Mr. Buxtan," Keen corrected his temporary ally. "I intend to burn this town to the ground and burn out whatever rot has taken hold." Buxtan shook his head, shivering. "No good can come of this. Please, we can go now." "Not on my horse you ain't. Not till this is done," Keen interjected harshly. Buxtan swallowed, eyeing the abandoned town with a fearful gaze. Any moment, he expected one of the eyeless loons to gut him with their wicked knives, or finish the job of blinding him. Yet, there was no one. Bartholomew had evidently summoned all his faithful to the angelic messenger's side. With the town deserted, it was a simple task for Keen to roll barrels through every door he could find. Once inside, he used whatever heavy tools he had to hand to smash the barrels open, spilling thick, pungent liquor across the floorboards and flammables of the cult's dwellings. Finally, He tossed in whiskey bottles stoppered with burning rags. To complete his grim task, Keen was methodical, he was thorough, and he was merciless. The fire took quickly, roaring as it flashed between buildings like some great fiery worm. The barrels spilled their flammable contents like blood, easily spreading the building inferno from building to building. The furnace heat burst from windows, each shattered pane going off like a firecracker on a pyre. Keen watched the place burn around him, his stern features splitting into a smile. "Now we go," he nodded to himself. But as he turned around, the air was split by a far keener cry that overshadowed the crackle and hiss of the spreading fire. Louder than a thunderclap, the cry forced Keen to one knee. He screamed in pain. It was like the braying of a horse, merged with the hideous cries of a burning man. Keen's horse reared in bestial terror. "I have to, Keen, I have to," screamed Buxtan. The one-eyed fiend lurched for his black charger, hauling himself up onto the beast. The outlaw grabbed the horse's reins, wrestling with the bucking animal as the flames riffed on the breeze, spitting embers into the cold night sky. A shadow, brief amidst the dancing light of Solitude's inferno, swept over them for a moment. "You aren't taking the horse, Buxtan, you old coward. Get here," Keen bellowed, drawing his repeater to his shoulder. Buxtan was weeping openly, shaking his head as he turned the horse away from Keen. "They've let it out now. I can see it now. Sorry, Keen," he wailed before digging the stirrups into the beast's flanks. But Buxtan and his stolen horse did not get far. It descended through the gathering clouds of smoke like a falling stone, billowing with ash and steam. The horse buckled and burst like a pigskin of water as it struck. Buxtan shrieked, but was soon lost amidst the confusion of talons and screeching. It was as if a choir of songbirds were burning in oil, flinging their charcoal feathers in all directions as they screamed their last, agonized ballads. Keen staggered backwards, his rifle falling from his hands as he fell to the floor in shock. It was massive, but it moved so fast, with jerking motions of a bird. He could not see the creature through the profusion of its many wings, which folded and flapped about its form like some demented funeral shroud. It was true. It was all true. He saw the blinking of its many eyes, set into its festering wings. Jewels in a crown of feathers and thorns. Keen rose to his feet. He could not look away from this creature. He watched as its long limbs raised Buxtan overhead. He watched it peel him like an orange. Even as he still lived, his screaming turned a wet, guttural thing, as his flesh looped about the bony talons of the Angel of Solitude. Slowly, its many wings unfurled, revealing the awful thing beneath. Keen's eyes welled with bitter tears, as his hard lips quivered like a child. Bones and flesh were fused in unnatural ways, undulating and oozing as the thing breathed in. The life of Buxtan, faces and beaks dueled for prominence on its hunched, eyeless head, cawing and moaning in perfect harmony. As he looked, he saw the truth of the fiend. He recognized the flesh which made the creature. Nothing angelic, nothing profane. It was meat, sculpted, twisted meat, built and shaped by sick imaginations, but meat all the same. He drew his pistol. Before he could fire, the blind cultists surged towards him, grasping his hands and shoulders, dragging him to his knees with a flurry of desperate strikes. The pastor's voice whispered close to Keen's ear, "Isn't it beautiful? We made him beautiful." The beast tossed aside the whimpering, skinless form of Buxtan, standing tall upon many legs, casting a great shadow over the bounty hunter and his captors. "You made that. I know those parts. Oh no. Oh, Jesus, no." Keen muttered in mounting despair. There were faces, stitched into the coiling hide of the creature, alongside the vulture wings and curving talons and beaks. He knew the faces, from posters pinned to the sheriff's office, pickpockets and delinquents he had brought to justice to Solitude. He couldn't look at the sagging gray portraits that now assailed him. He had been complicit, it read, "Our books," and took the Lord's words, straight from the good book, and made them real. It filled us with divine light, and it taught us how to make angel flesh. Glorious is his divine messenger, as he is the Lord, and the Son was of us. So look upon the Spirit clothed in flesh. Bartholomew panted ecstatically. But the key was you. It breathed its delicious words into my mind as I dreamed. It said, "Bring me a base thing, a faithless dolt, so that I may know him and be reborn." Are its words not wondrous? Bartholomew purred. Keen was certain no answer he gave would matter, so he simply spat at his captor hatefully. Keen continued to shout and curse incoherently as the vile patchwork monster advanced upon him. The monster's jaws were opening, so many folding joints and mandibles, slavering maws filled with broken teeth. "What the fuck are you?" he screamed. trying to affect a defiant sneer of disgust. To his surprise, the fiend also paused. Bartholomew's grip slackened in similar surprise. What am I? Tell me the things. Many voices hissed as one. Ignore the heathen. You are an Bartholomew began. Keen interrupted him with an elbow to the throat, sending the pastor gagging into the dirt. You're no angel, you're a monster, a killer, and I brought them to you. I'm as much a killer as you'll ever be. You son of a bitch, Keen screamed. In its formless face, it plunged a talon through Keen's shoulder, snatching him painfully from the cultist's grip, before flinging him to the ground. His body slumped to the ground, showering the creature with gore as his bowels were opened as the beast savaged him. A killer, as much a killer as you. It seemed to speak to itself, its oily voice rasping from too many mouths. Bartholomew and his men backed away from their angel as it raised its talons against them. A vast, six-winged shadow loomed over the cowering cultists. They finally stopped smiling, then when Mormon settlers passed through Solitude. On the road to their salt lake, they found a town burnt to ashes. The inhabitants of the town must have been slaughtered by some Indian band, who took their eyes as trophies, while some bodies were too severely butchered to identify as people at all. There was one survivor, who they picked up miles down the road. There wasn't a shred of clothes on his body, and he was dirty as a vagrant, covered in soot and blood, with ugly wounds all over his ruined body. He could barely stand without the aid of the burliest of the settlers. One of the older men of the caravan recognized the man's face from the papers, a Mr. Abel Keen. Apparently he'd been a bit of a legend in the wild taverns of the West. Nevertheless, they took him in. Despite his dread reputation, his mind was clearly broken. He spoke little, and seemed to stare at the sky in mute bewilderment. It's okay now. We'll look after you, one man said kindly, draping a blanket over Keen's scarred shoulders. Am I a killer now? Was all the madman could muster by way of a slurred response. What am I now?